Welcome to the Forever Better Academy podcast, where you will be given the principles, tools, and techniques to reach the next stage on your journey of self-mastery. Who could you become? I'm your host, Wade Vincent. Hey guys, have you ever felt like you weren't ready for something? That's the perfect time to know you are ready. That's when you're ready. When you don't feel ready, that means you're sitting right on the edge of that comfort zone that is just pushing past your capabilities, and it creates that fear. You're scared because it's the unknown. You don't really understand how to reach that next level or that next stage because you haven't done it before. So when you feel that you're not ready, that's the signal telling you are. So for many of you that have listened to this podcast, you hear the stories, you know a bit of my background. For those of you that are new, my name is Wade Vincent, and I spent many years, about 15 odd years, pursuing a career in hip-hop music. And I always had this sense of like perfectionism. Always very meticulous. Attention to detail was a huge focus for me. It had to just have the right amount of pizzazz. It just had to have that thing, you know. I was never sort of satisfied with enough. So always trying to improve and get better. And of course, those traits and habits, they serve you well. But you have to know that fine line between when the perfectionism is actually becoming a burden and slowing your process down. So I spent, as I said, many years not only performing and recording and writing music, but also producing music. And part of that process was many late nights, working through tracks and mixing and rendering and structuring out sounds and composing the songs. And I always wanted it to be, the best it could be, highly competitive. That was part of that world. When you're in hip hop, it was very much a competitive endeavor. You had to hold your own. And I always wanted to put out the best material. I was very critical of myself and never really okay with putting out something unless I felt it was the absolute peak that I could do, right? And I think one aspect of that, or one driver behind that, was really wanting to solidify my position as the best. I wanted to show people that what I could do was phenomenal. It's exceptional. Like, as I said, you're competing. You want to outdo and outclass other rappers and musicians. You want to show how good you are at this. That's just very much. I'm not sure if it's like that across all different musical genres, but especially in hip hop, that was a huge part of it. Flexing and bragging. It was part of the culture. And so I had that outward facing, that bravado. I wanted, beat everyone. And then inside, I think there's an element of is it good enough? And on top of that, it's coupled with you always are improving, so you never feel that you're there, because there isn't really a destination. You always continue to get better. You can always grow and improve. When you're mastering a skill or working on your craft, the whole idea is, over time, it just keeps improving, and that's how you become a master. So there wasn't a clear or a definite line when you knew something was done, and artists and painters talk about this, where you can always put on another brush stroke. You can always add when do you know it's finished, right? When do you know? And this is what leads me to this, like the biggest part of starting before you're ready is close enough or good enough. Now, I'm not saying that you should lower your standards by any chance, by any sort of stretch. You still have to have a standard and a level and a bar that helps push you and drive you and improve upon what you're already capable of. And part of that is facing that fear, because especially for me, in my experience, 100%, it was the fear is the obstacle. You think, why do you want to put out the best music that you possibly can? Because of a fear of being judged that you're not good enough. If you're stepping into the arena and you're prepared and you're accepting of that, and you're going to be in the battle zone and you're competing, it's foolish to go in with anything less than your best efforts, right? It makes sense. Like, you're not going to go in as a gladiator and forget your sword and helmet. You do everything you can that's within your control to prepare and put your best foot forward. So there's that element of that, but then the fear becomes paralyzing, because if you're not okay to sort of put yourself in uncomfortable positions, you'll never actually experience the opportunity to grow from those experiences. If you're continually perfecting the craft behind the scenes, behind closed doors where no one sees it, you never truly master it, because you've never taken it and subjected it to that critiquing and the judgment of others. And it's not that you need validation from others, but it's important. If you want to improve and grow, you have to put your head on the chopping block. You have to put it out there. That's part of the process, right? So the biggest challenge when it came to finishing a song was really that nothing was ever finished in my mind. I was so focused on the perfection that it took a little bit out of the real soul and magic of it. Because if, like, any musician or anyone who is really in depth in mastering their craft knows that feeling, that flow when you're in the zone and it just sort of works, and time doesn't matter anymore, and you're just creating, and it just sort of happens. And when you're spending so much time nitpicking every little aspect, and is the level of this cymbal crisp enough, or do I need to layer another clap over this percussion, and is the bass line muddying out the mix? Like, you can look at that indefinitely, and it becomes so prohibitive, and just, you become your own worst enemy, right? You're critiquing yourself harder than probably anyone else out there would. And people, unless you're a musician yourself, when you listen to a song on the radio, you don't generally pick it apart. You just listen to it and enjoy it because it makes you feel something. It tells you a story, or the music hits you. It does something to you, So a lot of times as an artist, I think probably too much time spent on focusing on the little details that get overlooked anyway, that no one really is focused on other than you, right? So because of that, the biggest obstacle was, as I said myself, was reducing the output. I wasn't putting music out. I wasn't, and when you're doing that, no one, as a musician, it's crucial. You've got to keep fresh stuff coming out. People need to be excited and aware and know that you're doing things, and you're creating constantly. Because it's just part of who you are and your lifestyle and the way you operate. If you're so hidden away and constantly doing this stuff on your own like this mad scientist, nobody is ever going to enjoy or appreciate your music, because they don't even know that it exists or anything's coming. So I had this as I worked through, I did a couple of albums and a few mixtapes and EPs and whatnot. And when I sort of started to catch myself doing this and not really progressing or putting things out, I sort of had to catch myself and look at it and say, well, where is the line? What is good enough? What if I let good enough be the measure? What if I get outside of my comfort zone, start putting music out before I'm ready, and just experiment, see what happens? And the beauty with music too, in especially in this day and age, the way social media and technology is you can test the waters and try things and do free releases and videos without it necessarily being an official release or part of an album or a bigger project. So you can really get a feel for when, what the listener is enjoying and vibing off, and what they like that you do, before you create that masterpiece, that seminal work that becomes a collection of your learnings and skills that you've mastered over time by releasing stuff, putting it out, getting a feel. You have to do these things. And when I sort of became okay with my fear of releasing more music, that was I definitely put the work in, but just hadn't gone to the nth degree where it was becoming prohibitive. I was making it as best as I could and putting it out, because ultimately, if you really consider it, you're always going to improve. So as I said before, there's no end. Like, you're not suddenly a musician 15 years in. You're a musician the whole time. You're just getting better. Like the first time you decide that you plan to go to the gym and you want to build up muscle mass, and you're a bodybuilder from day one. You're not only a bodybuilder when you look like Arnie, it's the process, right? So it doesn't make you any less of that goal, that thing you're doing or trying to reach or achieve. So when I understood that this is part of the process, I have to master my craft by showing the world my craft. It made it so much easier, because the pressure that I was putting on myself was removed. And believe it or not, when you put that level of pressure upon yourself when you're crafting something, usually it blocks that freedom and that creative, that flow process I mentioned, and you end up putting out lesser quality or a lower caliber work anyway. So it really doesn't do any favors when you have to just remove that self-imposed restriction, so you can just let it come and just feel it and enjoy it, and that's when the best music is made. People don't always book a studio session and head straight in and, okay, at 10:05 we're writing a hit. Like the best music that we ever made and wrote, us and the Born Fresh, the record label, was just when we were vibing, having fun together, and just challenging each other, being playful with it, enjoying it, just appreciating it for what it is, right? So once I was accepting of that fact that, I'm afraid, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I planned to put out more music quickly. So the first thing I did was the mixtape, where I would take famous beats or songs, or almost like, I guess you could call it half of a cover, where I'd write my own version of a song to a famous or classic beat or an instrumental, and I just went nuts with it. Just had fun, and did 17 or 18 tracks on a mixtape, sometimes 20 tracks, and just went all in, and just took the pressure off, because I knew it wasn't an album. It didn't need to be my best work, but I put everything into the way I structured my lyrics, and yeah, I was super satisfied and happy with the end product. You know, it come up perfect in my opinion, more so than the perfection I tried to do in the past. And which seems counterintuitive, right? The less work you did on it, the better it was. Because you can, I mean, you can ruin, again, with that reference to the analogy of a painter. You know, you put too many brushstrokes on something, you can actually ruin a painting, right? So same with music. And it better prepared me to ultimately, you know, write an album that was, you know, the best I could write at the time, and feel good about it, and not look back on it and cringe and think, oh, you know, like, and I can recall the very first album I did was absolutely horrible. It was horrendous, you know, and I look at that and I'm proud of that because I didn't let it stop me. And it's funny, actually. This is relevant to the whole concept and the topic. It's something that I want to tell you the story about this. So I don't even know how it became because it sort of shifted, right? So the very first album I ever did was called Still I Shine, and it was probably I think around that 2004 2005 period, if I can recall correctly, and it was driven by the fact, like at the time, I obviously said my first album, I had no real music out other than just performing at shows, the material we already had. And I found out about a competition where there was an Australian Music Prize, and to be qualified for entry into this competition, you had to have an album in stores as before the whole, you know, streaming in the early 2000s. And people still bought CDs, believe it or not. So you had to have an album that was distributed nationally in stores around the country. So that was pretty much the criteria of entering the music prize. And if you won the competition, you would win $25,000. So as a young musician with no money and no real budget to anything we were doing, you know, that seemed monumental. So I found out about the competition. I was reading a newspaper the morning before work when I was a chef, and it, it said basically that the deadline was 4 weeks from now, the day I was reading the paper. So I literally spent every single afternoon and night after work. I wrote the entire album. I produced all the music. I mixed all the music. I designed the layout of the artwork, and had the manufacturers. I've discovered the manufacturers who would create and press the CDs for me, and through my network, organized distribution through MGM to have it in stores everywhere around the entire country. And you know, I look back at that, and I did that in 4 weeks, start to finish, completely no project, nothing at all, no sort of early songs, it just from scratch. And as I said, admittedly, it was horrible. Like, it was nowhere near good enough, and I didn't win the music prize. But in the process, what I learned was how capable I was if I took the obstacles that were self-imposed out of the way, and there was a driver, being that I wanted to enter and win this music prize, and really prove to myself what I was capable of in 1 month. You know, like, and I'm very proud of that, and I often think of that time in my life whenever I find something's difficult or challenging that I feel, you know, I may not be able to deliver upon or achieve. And I look back and I'm like, well, you did an entire album in 4 weeks, you know, and this is what I say is it's weird because I don't know where it changed, but perhaps because that album wasn't good and I got, you know, critiqued on it. People, you know, told me it was horrible, and it was horrible. Like, I'm not mad about it. and after that period, I really, you know, worked so hard to improve and make sure that the next thing I released was perfect. I guess probably because I had to make up for, well, I felt that I had to make up for the the subpar release that I did previously. It's cool, thinking back through this and understanding why. Yeah, so then when it came time to finally release like what I felt was truly my first album, in the sense that it was polished and as perfect as it could be, and that I was proud of the release, and it wasn't rushed for a competition. It was just the culmination of all my work and skills over that sort of 14-15 year period. After doing those mixtapes, and as I said, really just starting to take the pressure off, I ended up building a massive music before I put the album out. So in essence, I had a plan. Just don't overwork it, don't overthink it, but give yourself the strategy of writing, say, 20 or 30 songs, record them all, and then cut them down to, say, the best 17 or 18 songs, whatever the number ultimately would be, right? So I found that happy balance, of not being too hard on myself, and just creating more than I needed to, so that I could ultimately had some choice in what made the cut on the album, right? So, and that was a huge change for me, to not hold myself back. So, and I'm super proud of that, because I look back and the whole process of those 15 years, I was able to refine how I approach things and not be afraid of it, and ultimately prove that I can deliver on what I was setting out to achieve, which is an album distributed nationwide, doing tours with famous musicians around the country, and releasing vinyl records, and doing video clips. And it was just, it was a great time in my life, and the hardest thing, I think, for any musician, and I think you can come to terms with it, but anyone that tells you that they don't sort of feel something from the critiquing, I think is really not telling you the entire truth, because ultimately you can ignore it, you can brush it off, because it's not, when someone critiques your music, it's a critique of the music. It's not you as a person, but sometimes it's easy to blur that line and feel like it's people attacking who you are, right? Because you put your heart and soul into the music, or whatever your endeavor is, whatever your projects that you're working on are, they feel they're an extension of who you are. So when someone attacks them, it feels like they're attacking, you and who you are and what makes you you. But ultimately, this ends up assisting you with making better quality product or services or music or whatever it is, because one of the key things that was a downfall of what I did was I made music for myself. I didn't really make music for the masses, music for the market, right? And the market will tell you what they want. If you listen and you are genuinely doing it for a love of giving the people what they want and serving the people and entertaining them, you can't be upset if they tell you they're not entertained, or they don't like, or they don't enjoy what music you're putting out, because it's up to them. They get to decide what they like. You don't tell the crowd what they like to listen to. You as an artist know how to make music, but it's a give and take. You have to balance like your craft and your creativity, and funnel that and shape it in a way that resonates with people and touches people, right? So in putting that stuff out, starting before I was ready, being afraid but doing it anyway, and putting that music out, getting the feedback of what people liked, what they didn't like, it helps me in the process because I learn from it, and it actually speeds the process of me mastering my craft because I'm learning on the fly. I'm getting real time responses to what I'm doing rather than sort of, working, tirelessly on tweaking every aspect of a song that no one's ever heard. It didn't serve me. I wasn't saving myself and becoming the best I could be at music because that truly took me stepping into the arena, putting it out to be judged. You have to be judged. And ultimately, I ended up putting out more music and far better quality music once I learnt to do this. So it seemed super counterintuitive if you think about that, but being able to step outside of that fear of not making perfect music and measuring it by that good enough metric, the music became like the most perfect music I could make at the time. It actually became better than I anticipated, and I made there was more fun and joy behind it, and you can hear it, you can feel it. It's different in songs where someone is more carefree and in touch with what they're trying to do, right? And not so restricted by those self-imposed pressures. So and I think one of the nicest uh, side benefits that I think that really came from this is like the overarching message of what I learnt and took away from this was I truly learnt to have more fun with the process, enjoy and just vibe on what I'm doing, and in doing so, I became less critical of myself. And once I was less critical and less hard on myself, I became less critical of others. Because they always say, you experience the world, you project your own perspectives, right? You project your understanding of beliefs and thought process. Everything pushes outwards. So when I realize I'm critical of others, especially in that rap world of trying to, as I said, be better or think, oh, I'm a better rapper than this person. I was actually doing that because it was really how I felt about myself. And I can recall like I would look at people that were finding success or making their success in music or the endeavor that I was pursuing that I felt were far less talented than I was, and man, it used to eat me up. It used to like it just gave me this rage and you project it to that person like this guy's whack. These guys can't write songs. Like how are people appreciating or liking what they're doing? It's garbage. And the more I I was critical of them, it was really just me being critical of myself because one, I knew they were doing the work that I wasn't putting in enough time to get better, and I wasn't enjoying the process, and I was really just angry at myself because of the way I was approaching it. And once I took that off my shoulders and that weight off my chest, you just became free in the music again, and you weren't concerned about competing. I think it was probably the biggest negative in that sort of space, and just with that hip hop in general. Like, and because I came from that sort of '90s era, hip hop really in the '80s was party music, and then it became this real sort of gangster, real, braggadocious, like stand your ground, stand firm, reflective of the times, of course. And now I feel like hip hop has gone, through those early 2000s and probably even extending into now, is far more of that party and joy again, just a bit more happiness. And maybe that was just, what rubbed off on me at the time, that energy about, trying to be better than others, and it doesn't serve anyone well. So yeah, it's been fun sharing this with you guys, because part of this is really just passing on, as I say, those tools and techniques and principles that I've learned along the way that are beneficial, that have impacted and changed my life, that I know can, assist and help you do the same. But also the learnings and understandings as I process these things as well, as a side benefit for me in doing these as well. And I'm enjoying it a lot. So, if there's one thing you take away from today's episode, start before you're ready, right? And the way that you know how to start is if you're afraid to do it and start now, you're ready. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. I will make another episode for next week. I look forward to talking to you guys again soon. And as always, who could you become? All right, guys, talk to you again soon.